everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Bar Talk, or Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Big show today. Today's show is we're doing it Friday on March the 19th. It is the opening day of the March Madness tournament. Technically, it was yesterday, but the first round is today. Yesterday they did the first four.
Well, no one cares about the first four, though. Nobody cares about the
I didn't watch the first four. So, but today is the official start to the field of 64, 68 technically now. But so looking forward to it. I always love this time of year. It's always great. Take off work. Normally I should be working right now, but I'm not. I'm doing the podcast because took off the day off today to watch basketball later. So pretty excited about that. So we'll start off with basketball. We had a couple big games at the end of the Big Ten tournament from our last show. We'll talk about the tournament, and then we will move into spring football. Big press conference from Ryan Day the other day, and then we will finish up the show talking some offensive line and some tight ends.
Yeah, it felt good. It felt good to have a press conference from Ryan Day this week.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I think we'll get right into it this week because we have a lot to go over, and basketball is starting to breathe down our necks.
Yeah, I know.
So, all right.
Well,
so
we had a lot of games and things that happened since the last time we talked.
Yeah, it was actually a busy week, and can't forget before we start. When we're saying spring practice today, March 19th, opening of spring football. So first spring practices are today. So.
I honestly believe it's going to be longer than 2 days this time around, knock on wood. So
seems like, and we'll talk about that once we get into the thing, but everybody's happy to, vaccines, and they've announced when 16 and older now can take vaccines. So I think we're heading in a positive direction.
Yes.
All right. Basketball. So when we last did the show, we were through the first two games of the tournament.
Yes.
We played Michigan in the semis. We beat them. It was a great game.
Yeah, I actually missed the first half of the game. Sorry, I was out buying a dryer. Like that's we got to make adult purchases. I know. I
comes out to me and tell you I have to get a dryer, and then it's like you're missing the first half of the game. But
I got to see the second half. I mean, that's the first half. Things. It was close. I mean,
I'm glad you've entered a grown up world, and you're at that point in your life that you can miss the first half of a big game.
I mean, I don't feel like I know it's the rivalry game. I should have probably saved that for another day, but I needed clothes to get dried without running the cycle for like 5 hours at a time. So it's hard to miss that one. It's the big one. But it was a good game. It was at least a good second half. I can't really speak for the first half. Ohio State totally dominated, took control of that game, and then gave it right back.
No, so I was just thinking
what we were concerned about, what we were talking about for the last show about them giving it right back in the end. They did it again.
The crazy thing about that, though, is unlike the previous two games, with 4 minutes left in the game, they were up 13. Like, it literally felt like that. Like, it was a good first half, Buckeyes start pulling away in the second half, especially once they got under 10. And I'm like, well, this is going to be opposite. They're going to blow them out. I really thought they were going to beat them by 20 plus that. I'm like,
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I watched that second half. I mean, they had no answer for us and they weren't doing anything.
That 10 minute to 4 minute stretch. I mean, Ohio State was really taking it to them. And I'm just like, nice. This is going to be a nice win for them. And then 4 minutes, they end up winning by one. So it was a very tense last 4 minutes. I went from thinking that they were going to win by 20 plus to literally thinking they were going to lose the game, right at the end, because I am just like Michigan's going to win this right at the buzzer.
Yeah. I mean, there's no excuse for, you're letting your offense get stagnant by not moving around. I mean, at least still make it hard on them. Defense, I don't think their defense wasn't really struggling too much down. So just Michigan started hitting their shots. Then it was just, like I said, they just, again, poor shot selection at the end of that game. Not moving the ball around, no ball movement to try to get any penetration or anything like that. I mean, they just don't have the guys that can create not enough of them that can create their own shots isolation. That they need that ball pen or the ball movement to be able to get that shot. Of course, Liddell missed a dunk, which was a killer. I mean, that kind of is that what started it all?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that was the point,
that was
right?
literally they're up 13, and that was going to put them up 15, and just like
it was like crumbled from
that would have been like that would have been Michigan's demise, and it ended up almost being Ohio State's demise. That
right,
that would have been the momentum the other way, being up 13. I don't think they would have been able to even think about coming back from that, because I mean, basketball is just that's basketball. It's a game of momentum swing,
right?
And with 4 minutes left in a game, you hit a dunk, you take a dunk like that, and that would have I think killed them. That would have been the final nail in the coffin.
Sometimes basketball, I just don't like. Sometimes I just don't get the officiating on it though, because sometimes it's so touchy, and then like sometimes they'll let anything go, and you really just don't have any consistency to it, and you don't know what you're getting called, because. Like the EJ Liddell behind the back move he tried to put on Dickinson, like not a great move, but I thought the guy pushed him away from the ball when he tried to do that. And I thought that should have been a foul called. I didn't see a lot of people crying for that. I mean, I know it would be pretty touchy to call that, but I just thought that there was something there that, like it seemed like he pushed him a little bit and a foul should have been called. I'm glad they held on. I mean, my closing statements on that is, that Juwan Howard, like he channeled his inner Harbaugh there. I mean, they can't stop your 7-footer. You got 20 plus seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
Ohio State's offense is stagnant. Like worst case situation is you dump it into Dickinson. He gets you up by 1, or I'm sorry. Worst case situation is he misses the play. You foul Ohio State. The most Ohio State could go up by is 3 at that point. And then you still have the time to, shoot the ball and get into overtime. Dribbling out the clock for one shot, far shot. I just thought.
And then not even giving it into your best player.
You didn't even move the ball at all. One guy touched it their final possession. So, it was a bad.
That's Smith, right? And he's really good too. I mean, he dominated I forget who they played the game before, but I mean, I think it was Minnesota. Or did we play Minnesota?
No, we beat Minnesota. They beat Maryland.
Maryland, that's who it was. I mean, he dominated that game. So, like,
he's a good player, and I get that, but he's not LeBron James. And even half the times when LeBron James would do that in the NBA, I always thought that was, stupid as hell. Like, you got 20 plus seconds. Why are you just standing there and just waiting for a shot? Dribble. You still want to get the defense out of position. Like, I understand maybe you're scared of a turnover, but. Yeah. You still got fouls to give. You still had time to try to move the ball around.
Yeah. Before we move, I agree with you. They should have.
I thought that was really poor play calling at the end of a game.
Yeah. Want to just mention, because you just mentioned the officiating, I kind of thought of one thing that, kind of like basketball officiating to me resembles always in football. It resembles when it comes down to like offensive holding and like pass interferences and defensive holding. Like it always seems like that stuff. Pass interferences are on every pass play,
right?
Defensive holdings on every play, offensive holdings on every play. It's just how strict are the officials calling it that game. That's how basketball officiating has always been, like in my mind. But it's the whole game. It's like there's always people touching each other and stuff like that. So when are you calling reaching fouls and when are you not calling reaching fouls? I mean, I've seen a lot of fouls where the guy's reaching all over him, and after the third reach, he strips the ball and nothing ever gets called. And then it's like. Gets the ball clean on the first one and it's a reaching foul. Same thing with like block shots. Like did he touch the guy's arm? Did he not touch the guy's arm?
I mean, I've seen Ohio State play a couple 7-footers in this tournament that are just like absolutely allowed to just abuse our guys down low and they don't get anything called on them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So then next day we play Illinois. So where the whole first half felt like that the juice was just gone. They were dead.
You could tell that they were a team that played 4 games in 4 days.
And like
at that point.
I didn't think they were going to come back at all, especially early in that first half. And I'm just like, it is what it is. We got to the final. This is my mindset. Hey, I mean, I like we just said, basketball's a game of momentum stuff. I just didn't think we were going to have the momentum today. They looked tired. I'm like, they gave it their all to this point.
Yeah.
And, but whatever, they got to the finals,
Play a respectful game.
They're,
respectable, excuse me.
And then they started coming back and they got back into the game and, and then they really got back into the game in the second half when they got it really close in the first half. They were only down a couple. What was it, 5 at halftime?
Half wasn't much. It was I know it was within 10. So
and then they just kept chipping away at it. Illinois pushed it out a little bit in the second half, and then Ohio State under 10 just came back and tied the game, and we got to
sorry if you hear dogs howling in the background.
I don't know who's at the house, but they hear something. So and then we end up tying the game, got it to overtime. So that was
I mean, you can only, there is nothing to hang their heads about in that game. I mean, like we've established, they were, dead tired. You could tell they played 4 games in 4 days. They went down big and they fought all their way back to get that game into overtime. So yeah, you didn't win in overtime, but you got there.
And that was the most impressive thing, just how they were able to come back and, especially how tired they looked. And I don't think anybody would have really batted an eye if they would have lost that game by 20 plus. I mean, it would have been like, they beat Michigan in the semis. They played a lot of tough games. Minnesota, Purdue, those were tough games coming down the stretch.
Right.
Michigan ended up being a tough game coming down the stretch. So, and they had to play 4 tough games. They at least reversed that losing streak they had at the end of the season. So you had at least a good taste, even if they got blown out by Illinois, you still had a better taste at least coming into the tournament then. But, they made an impressive comeback and it was just a little too short at the end. So I was pretty pleased with that.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, I think Illinois was locked up as a 1 seed. I don't think there's any arguing that. I think Michigan was locked up as a 1 seed. I don't think there's any arguing that at that point of that game. So really, I mean, you're a 2 seed or you're a 2 seed, because Ohio State locked up a 2 seed for sure.
Yeah.
At that game. So you play a respectable game, you get some momentum, get some confidence that you were able to fight back. Like it was, you always want to win. You want to win every game. Being the tournament champion would have been great, but you played a great game. You built some confidence for yourself. So they should have something to look forward to moving forward.
Yeah. All right. So then we got
Oral Roberts
coming up here at 3:00 today, actually later today. So from what I understand, just briefly looking at them, I've been, I didn't break it down or anything. Their team sounds like they're a good 3-point shooting team. They do have a fairly good guy down low that's pretty good. Good offensively, awful defensively. Now, before anybody says, oh, they're, Ohio State should easily beat them because, they're a bad defensive team. So Ohio State can score with them. And, Ohio State's defense will be, yeah. And if you're playing in the NBA, I would say, yeah, there's reason Mike D'Antonio teams never won anything. He was, offense doesn't, being just super great at offense ain't going to win you a 7-game series.
And, not chucking up 43s a game isn't always the answer either.
But it can beat you in 1 game. So you got to worry, even with them being, even if they're the worst defensive team in the world, I mean, if they are 100% on their shots today, you could lose this game. I mean, it can happen. That's March Madness. This stuff happens. 2 seeds where, it was very rare when Virginia lost a few years ago as a 1 seed. 2 seeds have lost in the tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it happens. So I think Ohio State just needs to stay focused. But what do you think on this matchup?
So, I mean, I think it's favorable for the most part because Oral Roberts, they don't have that huge guy that's given Ohio State so many problems, but they do have, I mean, their center, or I think he's a power forward. Kevin Obanor. He's, I think 6'8", so it's nothing out of the range of something Ohio State couldn't cover or guard, but he's good. He's averaging close to a double-double. I think it's like 18.5, 9.5 is what he's averaging as far as rebounds. Now, if you look at their team, though, the rest of their team doesn't have a lot of rebounds per game. So are his rebounds out of more so like necessity instead of skill that, he's the only guy that's going up and getting them? I'm not sure, but he is averaging about a double-double. So that's something to be worried about. I said 18 points. The guy is a good 3-point shooter. He doesn't take a lot of threes though. Like he has a high over 40 plus average from 3. but he doesn't take much. He doesn't get a lot of his points from beyond the arc in the game. So that tells me, the guy does score well down low, but he can also, move the ball out too for some, mid-range shots. So I think he's definitely going to be an issue to guard, but he doesn't have that height that we've really struggled with this year. So I think the team should be all right. The other player that we're looking at is Max Ammus. He's one of their guards. He scores a lot. Good 3-point shooter as well. Right now they're getting, 30 plus points per game beyond the arc this team. Yeah. So this is somewhere that we've seen Ohio State struggle with ball movement, keeping on their guys, at the 3-point range. So that's going to be critical to beating this team and beating them soundly, is making sure that you're on these guys on the perimeter. The one thing you said, they're not very good on defense. I think I saw, though, and I could be wrong, I think I saw the 3-point percentage against them, though, isn't great. So I think their perimeter scorers are also pretty good perimeter defenders as well.
All right.
Yeah. But I don't know, down low, like I said, they don't got a lot of height. They don't got a lot of stuff that really
it seems like have Ohio State released anything whether Young's playing today?
I haven't seen it. I would think so, because I heard that he was okay for both those other games, that it was just more so following protocol and just being overly cautious. Okay. So I would think Kyle Young's playing today.
All right. So I think that everything you said, definitely got to take that as perspective. The one thing that does worry me a little bit is when you say about their ball movement, their 3-point shooting. That's always kind of like the bread and butter to me for mid majors, is that, and that's where they really, one thing where they really get, I think, the major programs in the tournament is a lot, they have to rely on playing basketball more so than relying on superstars.
Right.
And
yeah.
So, they tend to always be very fundamentally sound. They tend to have good ball movement. They also tend to have really good leadership, senior leadership within the program, because, these are usually kids that have been around for a while. You just don't get that a lot anymore with the one and dones and, with the majors. So, so that's also some of the intangibles, outside of just playing basketball to look for too, is, where the leaders at on Oral Roberts, how good are they, that ball movement, how good are they at fundamentals? Sometimes, like you think back in the day, just different things, like I remember like the Princeton, backdoor games, and just how much, just some of that stuff with how passing is beat teams, especially in the opening rounds, that, the first 2 rounds where, teams.
Who they beat? UCLA that year?
I think so. It's just,
oh, wow, that's really dating us.
Yeah. But it's, you see that a lot every year. It's with these things, and that's what you get in these first 2 rounds with these lower seeds.
Right.
These are a lot of mid-major programs that they're very good at playing basketball, and, they only have to win 1 game. And, I mean, if Oral Roberts beats Ohio State, they might lose on, I'm not saying they don't want to win on Sunday, but they might lose on Sunday, but they made their whole year. They, they won a game in the tournament, where Ohio State, it's, you want to go, you got to at least get into the second weekend to feel good about it.
They're 2 seed. They need to go Sweet 16.
So that's where I'm at with that. You saw, mid majors are mid majors, and they're tough at times in these tournaments to beat because of stuff like that.
As a team, they're shooting 40% as a team, and we're talking like they make 11 plus 3-pointers per game. So it's not like they're only taking 7 and making 4 of them or something like that.
All right, so keep on moving on. Just so you. Winner of this game will play either Florida or Virginia Tech. So that's something,
which is a kind of favorable matchup still for Ohio State. So at least it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Ohio State's draw when you started looking out at you got to win today, but when you start looking out at some future games, that possibilities, that I do like their draw. All right, so just kind of finish off basketball for today. So we were kind of discussing before the show, and just wanted to throw it out there. So, what's everybody's opinion, just real quick, on how you feel when you're rooting for other Big Ten schools? How do you view other Big Ten schools in this? I have a different perspective on basketball than I do on football. Football, first of all, I mean, I've always the Buckeyes are the only team I root for. I'm not a really conference pride kind of guy.
This is an SEC country. No, we're not. We're not chanting Big Ten during the game.
Outside of Michigan, I do when it comes to bowl season. I don't want mine when I watch like when Wisconsin goes on New Year's Day and beats Auburn or beats whoever. I usually like that. That's like because the shit they spew every year, and it's just like, well, and then you hear all the excuses. Oh, we only care about winning.
We don't want to be there
because you guys have been to so many championships, but
I know
you're not named Alabama in the SEC, so like.
Right. Well, the conference wins those titles. Yeah. It's not Nick Saban and his juggernaut. No, it's the conference wins those titles.
Yeah. So, but I have a different perspective, even when it comes towards Michigan. I mean, that's sacrilegious. Now, I don't want them to win the national title. I mean, I loved when Louisville beat them a few years ago.
What was that? Villanova, too.
Yeah, Villanova.
I love especially when Michigan can get to the title game and lose then. Like, that makes me really happy.
If they win a few games in here, maybe lose next weekend, I'm fine with that. The other Big Ten schools, it just doesn't bother me. If Illinois ends up winning the national title, I mean, I'd be happy for them. That's, it's good for the conference. I mean, the Big Ten hasn't won a national title since Michigan State did in the early 2000s. So, right. That's, or mid 2000s. I mean, or it was
early.
Yeah.
I think that's the only one I can think of. So, I mean, I know there's Final Fours littered all over there, but
yeah,
Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin, because they lost to Arizona, right, in the national title.
Well, then they lose to Kentucky one year also to go play UConn. And
yeah. So
I mean, the Big Ten's all over Final Fours. I mean, Michigan State, didn't they make it all the way to the title game and lost to North Carolina?
Yeah, I think so. So
like a decade plus. I was going to be like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they all go together.
I know, it all blurs.
But yeah, so I mean, if one of these other schools, I mean, obviously I want Ohio State to win. If Ohio State wins the national, if they can pull it out this year, win the national title, I mean, that's unbelievable year. One of these other schools that's not named Michigan wins the national title. I mean, I'm not going to get bothered by it, and I'll be happy for them. I don't want to see Michigan win it. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't mind Michigan if they win a couple games, make the conference look good. That's fine with me.
Basketball school,
but it's. Because I like when they get them now that they claim to be a basketball school. So I like when they get a little closer to the prize, to taste it, and then it gets taken from them. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of go in line with you. I've kind of felt the same way during bowl season. Like anyone but Michigan, I feel good for when they win those games out of conference, because I think it's just because I like football more. And so that's something like, it's like, yeah, you always want to feel like you're winning your games in a harder conference. So I definitely like that. Now I'm not so sure, though, because of just how much hate we got from most other fan bases besides Nebraska, that we didn't belong anywhere because we played 5 games from our own conference. Like, hey, dummies, we're going to represent you in a national title game. Like, this is good for the conference. Like, don't be stupid. Ohio State has beaten your team so many times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think now I want all of them to lose horribly when it comes to bowl season outside of Nebraska. Basketball, I don't know, like you. I mean, it's fine. If they win, that's great. Of course, I want Ohio State to win. I mean, I'm happy for them. They win, but win or lose in the tournament, it doesn't really, I don't get upset if Alabama beats Illinois. That's not something that's going to bother me.
Yeah. All right. So moving on from basketball, before we get into the spring stuff, we did want to just quickly mention, and I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on it, Marcus Hooker, or is it Marcus or which one? Yeah, I can't. Their first names.
Malik's the older one in the NFL. Malik was the superstar. Marcus was the one that
I'm bad
had some broken coverage.
I'm bad at first names, so especially when they're the same letter. I get really bad with that. So it's the age that's hitting me. But he got he's been now a second DUI. So he had a DUI. Was it last year or the year before?
It was his freshman year. So year before that.
So his second DUI while being at Ohio State. So he's suspended indefinitely right now. They did talk about it a little bit at the press conference. I'm going to skip over that question because, we're just going to talk about it right now just real fast. That he's suspended indefinitely, and pretty much they said that they're going to let the process roll out, and then they will make whatever future decisions they need to make. I mean, it sounds like, number two, he probably needs to, DUIs can be a very dangerous situation.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
so,
very serious.
He needs to get whatever help he needs to get. And I hope, things get better for him.
I hope so too. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not going to sit here and say, the kid needs to be thrown out of school or thrown off the team. Like he made a mistake, but he made it for the second time. So you just got to let the process work its way out. And, you go from there. I'm not going to speculate or say that I want this to end one way or the other, because whenever things like this happen, there could be other factors in there. So,
yeah. All right, so let's get into the press conference with Ryan Day. Like I said, today's the start of spring football. On St. Patty's Day on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, he had his inaugural press conference for the season.
Felt great that
not only did it feel good, he looked like he was in just a great mood.
He had, off season beard was going on.
Yeah.
The thing about Ryan Day is don't shave just because you're coaching. Like, don't make yourself uncomfortable when you're on the sideline. Obviously, the man likes to wear a beard. Like, Nick Saban's not rocking, off-season beard. So if that's what Ryan Day is happy with, there's nothing wrong with it. He should go with that.
Yeah.
He should go with that look. I mean, I do always like when the rosy cheek assassin comes out, though. Clean shave means, we're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll. It's time to take names, kick ass. But if that's what he likes,
and remember, he did
keep it going, man.
I think he kind of let it out of the bag. What was it, a day or two early last year when the season was gone, and then just out of nowhere he was shaved.
Because he was doing national stuff and he still had his beard, and then out of nowhere he's on TV clean shaved, and we know that's season Ryan Day right there.
Yeah. So did he just give something up? And does he know something?
I think you and I both said as soon as we saw, we're like, well, that's it. We're playing this year. Yeah. Like, we're starting now.
Just a matter of time. Yeah. No, so he did have the press conference. Like I said, he was in a good mood. He actually, I've always joked around. He's kind of like, he's always, to me, he's a press conference coach. He's always a kind of like an in-between of Coach Tressel and Coach Meyer.
Yeah.
Coach Meyer is a very blunt, gives you the straight answer.
A lot of doom and gloom to come with it, but he told you what you needed to hear.
You could win 45-0 and you'll get every bad thing. And it's like, they just...
you had a clown show because you fumbled in the rain.
Yeah, so he... and then Tressel, I mean, it was the complete opposite. Now, I know some people on the beat didn't like Tressel's press conferences. Personally, as a fan, and I watched a lot of his press conferences, especially those from that 2005 to 2008 stretch when ESPN used to broadcast every freaking and I was in college at the time, so at the end of college, and I'd be in between classes and stuff, and I'd always catch Tressel's press conference. So I always loved it because he would beat around the bush so much and go down so many different roads, and he ask a bunch of more. He would ask questions, and then he would kind of make I think the reporters just didn't like it because he kind of made them feel dumb at the end of it.
It was like Confucius and the Riddler met somewhere in the middle, and they were the one answering these questions. I mean, it was like a philosopher and a villain, he'd take you so many different paths. It wasn't so much like. And we talked about it too with Day, because you said he's kind of in the middle. Dale sidestep a lot of questions. Jim Tressel would purposely take you down a road to just abandon you there. He would start leading you to an answer, and then there would be nothing there.
Yeah. So I always appreciated his style. I mean, I would see where people on the beat don't like it. I would get pretty upset too if I was sitting down there, my precious time where I have to get a story.
As a fan, though, it was kind of hilarious to at least just see how they would end up.
At least just answer it that I can't answer that and just be done with it. All right, so I kind of just marked down each question. Was going to go question by question, but I think I'm going to group them now together just so we can kind of get through it. So the first question was about the QBs. And I texted you last night. I'm like, Well, it's pretty obvious to me that Ryan Day listens to Buckeye Bar Guys.
Absolutely, he does. He's our number one fan. Thank you, Ryan.
Because it sounded like he was verbatim when we were talking about QBs from a couple weeks ago, and basically, and now granted, he might have this might be coach speak that he's not letting the cat out of the bag and stuff, but from what he answered the question, and the way I read it is, and I believe him, is that they're all at even playing field right now. There's nobody that's in front of other. They are looking to get as many reps as possible. They're looking to find more reps than maybe they do in other years.
Yeah.
He's basically, I literally think he said the word reps and just that question 15 times, it seemed like. I mean, he said reps every other word. And so they're going to get him into game situations, all three of them. And every one of them, he said, we're going to try to get him the equal amount of reps all around the board, and just a lot of reps.
Well, and I agree. I mean, you have to, and they are on equal footing. And CJ Stroud's been in the program, but so is Jack Miller. Like they've both been healthy. They've gotten their reps already. They've thrown with different people. I'm sure they've built rapport with different people. But Kyle McCord, the kid's a stud as well coming in. And those guys, outside of, working out and being in the program already, he's thrown more in-game passes than either one of them, recently. So he's been in more in-game situations because he's been in-game, although be it high school. Guy plays at a high level. I think he's Mr. Pennsylvania everything. Like, I mean, the guy's probably spoken in the same sentences as, those quarterbacks from Pennsylvania in the 80s. Like the guy's just, he's an incredible QB. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. So a little bit later into the press conference, a couple questions later, he was asked kind of about him and Corey's dynamic. So like kind of who's running what. And so he said that Corey runs the meetings. He's the quarterback coach, but he's right there for, here. He's right there with Corey. There's obviously a lot of work that needs to be done between all three quarterbacks. So they kind of need to split it up as much as possible to get whoever needs to be ready for the season. But he said that, and then he kind of, offenses in general, but specifically quarterbacks, these guys are a lot farther along than they were 10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
These young guys, they run more college style offenses now in high school, usually across the board. You don't get a lot of wing T offenses like I ran in high school.
Right.
These come from very pass prolific offenses.
7-on-7 camps are everywhere.
Yeah, 7-on-7 camps are everywhere. And a lot of these states, they still do spring football, especially in the South, and they do 7-on-7s in the spring. So, and they're all on these camp circuits now. I mean, these guys are going to how many camps,
right?
So it's just it's a much different game than it was 10 years ago. Somebody asked him then about just kind of what he would say to the quarterbacks about, about the kind of the competition and, playing each other. And he basically said that, don't get into the daily battle.
Don't hate each other.
Yeah, don't hate each other. You can be good friends, and a lot of these guys in these battles end up being very close to each other because the competition is so fierce. Now, he said you do need to be competitive, but at the same time, don't get caught up in the daily, who's leading the depth chart.
I believe he said friction. Friction is not good for anybody. So yeah. And you 100% have to agree with that. You can't be hating the guy next to you. It's a battle that you guys got to fight together because you got to be in it for the team. And how volatile do you think Ohio State fans are going to be when a winner's announced? I mean, I'm just thinking back to Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow.
There's always,
and now I'm thinking there's a third person in the mix here.
I think in the mind of most fans, probably Stroud's in the lead just because they saw Stroud the most last year. And that's just kind of how Ohio State fans work. And so I'm thinking if it's anybody but Stroud, there will be a lot of issues probably because they will think that, there will probably be a lot of things that get thrown out there.
A lot of the commentary I see from people is like, oh, well, have you seen Stroud throw? Like, he's so much better. Like, he's going to be the starter. It's his time. Like, it's like, have you seen any of these guys throw in high school? Like, these guys are all amazing quarterbacks. Jack Miller is a high-level quarterback. He slipped because he had injury issues.
Yeah. All these guys play in top-level high schools. They play good competition and stuff, but nothing's like Ohio State. And it's just like the same thing you say when they go to the pros.
I think Jack Miller was on the worst team.
It's just these guys they're playing against. I mean, have you seen what some of the talent? I mean, you get such a. I mean, go look up when you want to think of high school football. Go look at the pictures of Nick Chubb running in college or in high school track and field. And I mean, he looks like the Hulk.
Well, right.
And there's guys that look like they're 100 pounds.
High school's fun because it's like spot the D1 scholarship athlete.
Yeah. So there is such a difference that you don't get. There's not that difference anymore in college and high level college football.
Well, right.
And then there's really no difference then once you get up further.
Well, right. Every level the playing field gets more even for these guys.
Yeah. So I don't get too passed up on. Did you see the who throw in high school? Been like, who was he playing against? How good were they? And all that stuff. All right. One last thing on this to discuss. So he talked about the last final question here. Looking for leadership. That's kind of what he was discussing for how does each one of these quarterbacks become leaders going forward? He said, he wants to see how quickly they can learn from their mistakes. He's not so fixated on mistakes that they make, but are they making the same mistake over and over and over again? And then really the thing I loved, he made a quote that I wrote down is, how quickly can you get the answers to the test? And, and I really liked that. That was that one really stood out to me. It's just basically, are you anticipating or are you reacting? And, he kind of named off some of the greats, and, these guys, they see the whole field, and that's what's important. Are you studying? Are you doing your film studies? Because that's all what being a quarterback is knowing what the defense is doing before, the defense knows what they're doing.
Right. And that's so important. Just making sure that, like you said, like you kind of learn from things. You take the time when you're not, when you're not in game, when you're not in practice, but you got to take that time to yourself also, that you are studying what you could possibly be doing wrong, what different looks you see from defenses. So you know what you see when you see it, and you know where to go. So that is absolutely so important.
Yeah. All right. So next question came, it was about the vaccines, and basically, so nobody knows today actually, is the first day 40 and over can get vaccines here in the state of Ohio. And then March 29th, it's 16 and over. So
yeah,
basically the whole team as of the end of this month will be eligible to take their vaccine. So, I mean, he was really stoked. You can tell that really made him really happy, because it kind of, he kind of mentioned then later in the press conference, he's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel,
right?
And I think this is the start of it. He did say that it's not going to be a requirement. It's going to be left up to the kid, each individual athlete and their families, whether they want to get the vaccine or not. But he did say in a later question that he doesn't see any reason why, a lot of them won't get it. But again, they're not gonna say you have to get it or you're not gonna play. They're scholarship players. And I think each one of them understands, like, if you get it, you're still gonna have to sit out the whatever Big Ten standard for next year is going to be to sit out if they get it. But maybe the rest of your teammates won't have to sit out, because if they're vaccinated, they're vaccinated.
Yeah, no, and I understand, risk and reward with that. I can't imagine, and I don't want to speak for the kids, because, you could be scared. There could be some adverse effects. You could have your own opinions on how things are handled, if you feel like it's political, whatever it may be. But just, outside of that, I can't imagine many kids wouldn't want this, because they wouldn't want a repeat of last season.
Yeah, exactly. Next question was about they talked about the quarterback battle a lot. And so they asked him, how many, what other battles was he looking for going to into spring? So he specifically mentioned the linebackers. He said because, they lost 4 different guys, how the next guy is going to step up. He mentioned the defensive backfield. There was a lot of moving parts last year with that, and there's a lot of improvement that needs to come this year. So, he's obviously looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about the offensive line in a little bit, but he did specifically mention the offensive line and the tight ends. We'll be talking about both of them, and those are some really big battles coming up. And I liked all those answers that he gave.
Oh yeah, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with anything he said there. I mean, it's also true also that, he also said about competition. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. I'll go back to where I was. But he also, last question, I think of the day, asked him, about the running back competition, how he felt with that. And he said that it's going to be interesting to see that, they're all there. There's 6 of them, and we'll see how it shakes out. But when it comes to like the other ones, linebacker, I'm really intrigued by, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit because, you got the 3 guys that you think, but you got like Craig Young's looming out there. You got Simon, Milton. So a lot of,
and I think we'll start doing defense next week. Yeah. So we'll be getting either, we'll probably start with defense line next week, but we'll do linebackers probably the following week. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff.
A lot of depth in a lot of places too. Yeah. Just unproven, but a lot you have to see from practice.
Yeah. Going off of the running back, so we'll kind of keep this all grouped together for competition. So he says he hopes he does have a pecking order by the end of spring, but he's going to let him compete. And I'm trying to guess how many times this has been mentioned in all these past years and stuff like that about if we have to use 2 running backs, we will use 2 running backs. That seems
right. I know that's like.
I laughed when he said that. But I've heard that one before.
That's almost like about, people asking if this is the year that the tight end is going to be used more. That's on par with that.
Yeah. And then just we'll throw in he was asked also a question in there about the receiver depth. Basically a lot of, you think about it, their whole goals have always been over the last several years, the 6-man rotation. But, last year was basically a 2-man. It was a 2-man show.
It was 3 people. I mean, J-Mo was, Juice Williams was there too.
But so they asked if he was going to, try to get back into his old rotation, or is it just still the Olave Wilson show going forward? And basically he answered it. I mean, this was probably the one question where he was really he didn't really show his cards on this question. That he did say that, last year was funky, but he really wants to kind of see where the reps all fall out and the thing. He knows he has tons of kids there.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be hard to balance because you have all that talent, but you got to make sure your best guys are on the field too. You can't just be rotating for the sake of rotating. Like, there's a reason behind it. If your best guys are tired, get someone else out there, but you can't just, you got to have the best guy on the field. You got to give yourself the best chance to win. If all equals footing, like Paris Campbell and KJ Hill a couple years ago, they've completely different players, but they both added a little bit of something. So you could, if you had to take Paris out of the game, you're confident in KJ Hill's ability that catches everything in the middle of the field. Whereas KJ Hill comes out, you're confident Paris Campbell can, take a ball 60 yards to the house. So, I mean, there were things that each one brought to the table that was so great that it made sense to have that rotation. Me rotating out Chris Olave, and we're just throwing out a name here for Emeka Egbuka. Even though we know Emeka Egbuka is really good, really great, it doesn't make sense to get Chris Olave off the field just for the sake of having a rotation.
Yeah, exactly.
But in that sense, we know the guy's already good and that he does deserve to be on the field.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Just don't take the guys off to take the guys off. But if they deserve to be on there, and Olave and Wilson are going to need breathers.
And he said that if you've earned your shot to be on the field, you're going to be on the field.
Yeah, exactly. He did say, and then the next question was about kind of, they talked about the analysts being hired in. So again, it was a lot kind of like how we mentioned it,
It just makes sense. I mean, no one should there was too many people that were like, oh, these guys were losers as coaches. Like, it's an extra set of eyes and ears that have been around the game for a long time and an extra mind. He specifically mentioned, and sorry, to cut you off, a lot of it, he found like, even though he has successful young coaches, there's still young coaches that haven't been, seen a ton of these situations as a coach. Maybe they have as a player, but they haven't seen a ton of it at their age as a coach. And these guys are just a resource that they can, bounce some ideas off of, get some ideas from, help them become more successful in their craft. There's, absolutely nothing wrong with it. For people like to have been mad about that to begin with is just insane.
Yeah. He did talk a little bit about Justin Fields. Basically, he was asked, how he feels about some of the criticism that's come Fields' way. And he's basically said that, I think you can tell he thinks a lot of it's probably unfair, but
yeah,
guys are doing jobs. He did say that he seems pretty confident that Fields is going to make a lot of plays. He said Fields is extremely smart. He will understand any offense that's thrown at him. And, that he's got that going for him. So,
he did say, the one thing that we've been saying, everyone's been saying for the longest time that has been defending these criticisms of Justin Fields. Like, one, I don't think Justin Fields has any trouble going through progressions. Two, when your first read is Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, and they're going to get open eventually. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Everyone's, he holds the ball too long. He knows that he can take a hit. He knows he's athletic enough that he can spin out and do something if he feels the pressure. And he knows if he holds the ball longer, that guy's going to be open, 30 yards down the field. So I don't fault him as much as what some of these national guys do. And I think we could have a whole podcast. I know we did a segment before. I think we could have a whole podcast on the disrespect of Justin Fields, because he's an incredible quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we'll get more into it. I think we'll probably, as we get closer to the draft here and get through spring here, practice. Draft's at the end of April. So we'll get more into the draft as in the next couple of weeks, because we'll start looking into some of that stuff more, see where some of the Buckeyes are going to end up. And I'm sure we'll have some Urban Meyer talk, and maybe a few other teams we'll throw in there. So just a couple of things, just quickly finish up this segment. Just I loved what he said about Paris Campbell. Paris Johnson. He was asked about that. He said he gives them a lot of position flexibility. And then, they loved how he played at the end of the season when they needed him in an emergency situation at guard. And so they're going into the spring, they're going to start him at guard, and then they'll see what happens from there. And then he got a follow-up question a little bit later down where they said, is it a possibility that one of these other tackles could end, one of the starters between MPF and Munford, end up being a guard if they feel Paris is better at tackle and one of those guys can move down to guard? And he said absolutely, that basically anything is on the table.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting. I think you probably you'll see Munford and MPF at tackle, but at least it's always good to have your head coach keeping an open mind about a situation that,
right.
Hey, if Paris Johnson ends up needing to be a tackle and Thayer Munford can play guard, maybe, that helps. I'm sure Munford won't want to hear that,
well, that's not the reason he came back.
Yeah.
So.
I'm assuming that he's not going to force Munford down into guard, because, he's going to want to, coaches, as long as he can play tackle, and we know he can play tackle, that, coaches want these kids to get drafted just as much as the kids want to get drafted. And, don't think that that's not a mindset into a situation.
It's like, right. I agree with you. I think if anything, it would be NPF that moved down. I don't know. It really seemed like that was the exact push that he needed in his third year, was getting Paris Johnson on campus. That really gave NPF, that fire under his butt to get it all kind of like all figured out. He was great last year. So I still don't see him getting moved down. I think Paris Johnson, like today, could be as good or better than NPF, but I think I don't think it's enough that, a guy that gave up 0 sacks gets moved down to a different position. Yeah. I think you're better off getting Paris Johnson in at guard first.
And I think that's what
I don't think you miss, like, either way, even if you could say, he's marginally better than either one of those two right now because he's just that great of a talent coming into the school. Did either one of them give up a sack last season?
No.
Okay. So I don't think I don't think it's going to be enough that you could say, hey, I can justify moving these guys down. I saw Paris Johnson knock some guys into the dirt on Clemson's defensive line when he lined up as guard. So yeah. I like that. I think that's a good fit right now.
Yeah, I think.
But we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a second.
And then just to finish up, he was asked just a couple of general spring questions and like teaching questions and things. So basically, he was asked. He loves spring, and you can tell he's a teacher. He says the teaching aspect,
favorite part of his game,
that there's no stress about a game around the corner. This is just all about fundamentals right now, and teaching these guys how to be better players. He said Zach Harrison has been looking very impressive in winter, so he had a lot of good comments about that. And later he did mention what was the other guy?
Thayer Munford,
that's
as
right.
a good leader, and Zach Harrison, as a leader.
And then, he said it's, they basically have 2 freshman classes there. That's goes back to the quarterback situation. They really do have 2 freshman classes. So, there's going to be a lot of teaching, this spring. And, he said trying to find the balance. I mean, he did talk about trying to find the balance from, hey, we're teaching, but at the same time, we also are implementing. And, so there's a lot of work. I think Ryan Day definitely seemed like excited to be doing what, I mean, you could tell. I was telling you a little bit off this that you can tell that there was a lot that really dragged on him last year, and when you he even said he kind of rushed some things a little bit last year. He didn't really, maybe he focused on some stuff where he should have focused on other things, but he didn't know when he was going to get another game,
right.
And so it was like he was so fixated on game reps, and you can definitely tell the fundamentals weren't there with the team last year.
No, and they needed to be. You needed to take that time to get that defense running more smoothly. And exactly, it's kind of like you threw in guys, and some of those guys were new starts. I mean, and that's Marcus Hooker was not a starter. Jordan Fuller was the starter. Maybe if Jordan Fuller was still there last year, you could have afforded to not go over like fundamentals and just say, hey, we're just focusing on game stuff, not really so much improving, your footwork or whatever, that we have to go over fundamentally to, get you ready. But with those were the type of guys, you had some new guys come in that you really need to take the time to make sure that they could it's like when you do practice, it's so you can do something without thinking. I mean, that's the reason you do all that stuff. That's the reason that you take so many drills that you're just, you're by yourself. You're not like, I can remember, and not that I ever, did anything great with catching, but blocking drills, it's not game situations. It's just someone's throwing a ball into the ground and you're continuously, driving your knees into the ground to be able to block the ball.
Yeah.
That's why they do the stuff that you can. So when you see that, it's just instinctively, what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to become second nature to you. So when you get guys that are new starters, you have to be able to, that they, fundamentally they know what to do without thinking about what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot. They already have enough thinking to go on when just in the operation of the play and just the basic stuff that they need to know how to do, the blocking, the tackling, how to throw the ball, where your foot should be,
right?
Like, all that stuff. That's exactly that stuff you shouldn't be thinking about,
right?
And that's and that's where teams get slow when they are thinking about some of that stuff. So. No, I definitely agree with that.
And I really I think Ryan Day's a good coach. I think he's a good person. He's humble. He takes blame. So I was really appreciative to see him kind of, put that one on himself, that he rushed through that stuff and, went too much into game-like situations that they didn't work on fundamentals.
Yeah. And then just 2 last questions. So the first one's on kind of going off of spring. Mick, I loved what he said. I mean, just so much of Mickey Mariotti means to this program. They're basically starting spring because he felt like they needed a full 7 weeks of winter, because that's just to get it. They lost so much time last year, and when the head coach of a football team, when he's eager to get going with spring, when your strength and conditioning guy, the guy that's in charge of that whole thing, can come to you and be like, I need 7 weeks with these guys.
Yeah.
And he has that much respect within the program. I don't think you get that at a lot of big schools with these big time head coaches and stuff like that. And, that the strength guy is not going to necessarily come to the head coach and be like, I want a full 7 weeks with them. And probably wouldn't get that with some of these programs, but here he's respected enough to get that. And I definitely loved hearing that, because he's right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he knows what he needs. He's been around long enough. He knows what he needs, and the coaches gave it to him. So yeah, that's awesome.
And then the last thing there was one question on Al Washington. And so, he basically said he was blunt. He said he did not like the publicity that went around all that stuff. But I mean, he had a lot of great things to say about Al. He loves Al. Glad he's back with the team. He said that he always talks to him. He wants him to have great opportunities. He wants them to be coordinators, to be a head coach someday. So I thought it was kind of interesting on the publicity thing. I don't know if that was more directed towards maybe Tennessee, that, maybe some of that stuff shouldn't have got out. But I mean,
yeah, he's still here. It seems like he'll start the season.
It didn't seem like he was mad at Al. I'm assuming the leaks of all that stuff came from the Tennessee side. So, for Tennessee's sake, they probably don't want to play Ohio State anytime soon.
Well, if you talk to a Tennessee fan, that they're probably going to meet up with Ohio State in a bowl game. If you're a realist, though, Ohio State and Tennessee, outside of an actual regular season game being scheduled, they're not playing anytime soon.
Yeah.
So maybe if Tennessee gets put on the schedule within the next 5 years or something like that, which I doubt will happen, yeah, then maybe. But Tennessee isn't playing Ohio State in a postseason for a long, long time.
Yeah. All right. So offensive line, we've done quarterbacks, we've done receivers, we've done running backs. So what do you think? We're coming up on the offensive line. We'll do tight ends today too. So there's a lot of intrigue on this offensive line that you would think that it's pretty settled, but none of us. Why can't I think of his name? The other guard that came in at the end of the last year.
Matthew Jones.
I knew it was Matthew. Now I'm doing bad with last names.
The Jones brothers. That's Dwan and Matthew, even though they're not related.
Yeah. Okay. So he kind of opened up a lot of people's eyes at the end of last year that maybe he should have been the starter over Harry. And we talked about that. And when you saw how he played at the end of last season, I'm like, I don't know. I probably would have started him over Harry, but and that's not to say that Harry is not going to end up being great at Ohio State. He's young. He hasn't had a lot of game reps, and sometimes it takes the guys a little longer to get used to stuff. And
you mean didn't have a lot of game reps going into last year?
Yeah,
because he was a starter for.
Yeah, but going into last year, he didn't have really anything, and then he had no practice behind it.
Yeah, no, I get that. And he didn't come on. I mean, I know he was doing all his workouts. He was sending them into Mick, but he didn't come in early the year before either.
Yeah. So we saw a lot of great things from Paris being guard at the end of the season. Matthew Jones, looked very good at the end of last season. Dwan Jones has looked very good at spots when he's been in there, when he's gotten opportunities to play. I mean, when Munford was sick, he came in and we were down all three tackles, starter tackles, weren't they? Or
it was it's the two and Paris. They were all out of that game. So, it was him and Max Ray, and they both looked great.
Yeah. So, he looked great in that situation. So there's a lot of options. I mean, is Harry going to end up being the starter at center? Or is Matthew going to take that spot and Dwan's going to come in to be the other guard?
There's so much at play. So let's start where we think what we know is confirmed. So tackles.
Munford and
MPF. We feel pretty confident those are your two. I mean, when I say pretty, 99% sure, those are your two starting left tackles, barring any sort of injury in spring or summer.
And like I said earlier, no head coach. Head coaches, people sometimes think coaches get lost up, and no head coach. Ryan Day is a smart dude. He's not gonna. Thayer Munford's not getting moved to guard because the guy wants to get drafted. He wants to be the top left tackle taken off the board.
Well, he came back. He did you a solid by coming back. You're not going to move him to guard.
Yeah, and I don't really. MPF looked so good last year. I don't think you're going to move him to guard.
There's just no reason to.
You have the continuity on the outsides that they're both can play. It's just now you got to get that continuity in the middle to make one cohesive offensive line. And, that's we talked about that last year, during the season. The offensive line is always the hardest part. It's just that's where you need 5 minds to think like one mind. And,
yeah, absolutely. You need continuity.
And it's the one spot on the field where you really need continuity because they have to. There are so many different blocking schemes that go on the offensive line because literally you could call the same blocking scheme and on 3 plays in a row, you might have to block a different person depending on how the defense is lined up. So like they have to all be mentally in tune with each other because even the center and sometimes the center, I get the center point stuff out, the quarterback points this stuff, but the best offensive lines, that's just a formality. The center or the quarterback are pointing stuff out, but they all know what the other guys are thinking.
And what the other guys are doing. Absolutely.
So that's where you got to get that continuity in the middle. I think you have your outsides. I think there's 3 guaranteed starters for sure, and that is the 3 tackles. Which I think Paris is the guaranteed one of the guards.
Is this Thayer's 4th year as a starting tackle at Ohio State?
Yeah, I think so.
Man, that's just incredible. And like today, I know he came back to prove that he's a first rounder, which if you looked at last year, he's a first round tackle. I mean, the guy, I don't think I think scouts or whomever, they have to take a step back. They have to look at how he came to Ohio State, how much weight he's lost and how good he's made himself.
I think the public gets too caught up on the Kiper Juniors and the McShays and the draft analysts. If Mel Kiper Jr., I know ESPN pays him very, very well. If he was as good as what he is, he would be working for better money as an NFL person. I mean, he would be a general manager somewhere because, that's why what's his face from the NFL Network, who I always thought was better than Mel Kiper Jr. was anyway when they did their coverage. I can't think of his name. That's why the Raiders hired him. And I think he was a good fit at that. So, I think everybody gets too caught up. The scouts are looking at so many different things. I agree with you. I think Munford has already proven he's a first round. He wants to be a high first round pick.
Oh, I know.
He wants the extra Benjamins, and I don't blame him. And I wouldn't have blamed him if he left. I thought he was going to leave, but I'm not blaming him for coming back. He thinks he's got a little bit more to prove, and I hope it works out for him because if it works out for him, that's good things for Ohio State.
You think he could end up better than Taylor Decker?
Yeah, I think he could. I think he could be better than any of those guys outside of Orlando. I mean, he could be right up there as one of the best tackles.
He can climb Mount Olympus, but he can't be at the top of it.
He's not Zeus, so. But it doesn't mean he can't be great. I mean, he could be he might be the second best tackle that's ever taken at Ohio State. You never know. Thayer's done a really good job. And
I think
the only year that he's really not performed was the year that he was hurt a bunch. And,
he still didn't do bad.
He didn't do bad, but I mean, you could tell he was a step slow that year, 2 years ago. And he wasn't last year. And he didn't have a lot of game reps last year because they didn't play a lot. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know, because Taylor Decker was still a decently high first round pick. I mean, he was like mid first round. So don't know if he's there yet, but I definitely think he could be on the same.
If he ends up
on that pace,
the thing is, if he ends up being considered the best or second best left tackle in the draft, he's probably a top 10 pick because those guys go.
Now is MPF going to be the best left tackle in the draft that never played left tackle?
Oh God, I mean.
He's younger.
There's it could happen because there's now the Browns drafted Jedrick 2 years ago, and he never played or last year. Right. He never played left tackle. He was brought in to be a future left tackle at Alabama. It
didn't happen.
It never happened because he ended up leaving.
I mean, MPF, barring some sort of year that put Thayer into second and third round conversations, why he wanted to come back. I don't see any way if MPF plays like he did last year, this year, he'll be a first round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they could easily they could be the top 2 tackles taken next year. Who knows? I mean, and if that happens, then
you at least better be in the national title game again if that happens.
It was a really good season for Ohio State.
If that happens, you better be in the national title game again.
So yeah, I think the other two spots are, I think Harry is going to end up taking the center. I think as that Michigan State game went on last year, he got better as the game went on. Now he's going to actually have an off season, a true off season. He's going to be the center.
But he has surgery.
No,
he's not having an off season.
Right. But hopefully we'll see. I don't know.
That's why, like, if he didn't, I would have no doubt. But I mean, Matthew Jones came in. Matthew Jones looked almost maybe even a better guard than Harry Miller.
Matthew Jones could be the starter.
And you gotta, if you look, if you go back, and it might be 3 years, there might be a gap in there. Matthew Jones, what people don't remember, because you have Harry Miller, who was top interior guy. You had Luke Weipler the next year, top interior guy. What a lot of people forget or maybe don't know or didn't follow recruiting that well, Matthew Jones was the top interior or close to top interior right before them. Stud didn't want Matthew to work out as center because he had Josh Myers and he had Michael Jordan at the time. So he wanted Matthew Jones to focus on guard. Matthew Jones was originally brought in, though, like he was projected to be a center, but when Ohio State got him, they wanted him to be a guard.
Yeah.
I mean, that could all change. And I don't know if he played center in high school or not. He might be the same situation as Harry, where he might have played outside.
Oh, so, I mean, Matthew Jones might end up taking the center spot because of Miller's injury.
Now, Miller could still be a guard in that situation.
So then it comes down to Miller or DeJuan. And depends how good DeJuan looks in the spring. So I
think DeJuan gives you the advantage that he's probably the best 6-man offensive lineman. I mean, obviously he can't play. I would imagine center for DeJuan's going to be pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean,
but he gives you so much flexibility.
I would love to see. I mean, I would love to see him a little bit more at guard before I got a real good feel about that.
Yeah,
because I mean, he's so big and he's just this height. He's a center body or a
tackle's body, right?
So I mean,
there's been tall guards before.
Tall. It's harder because you actually got to get down in lower stances.
And I know I don't know if he ever was an All-American at Ohio State, and
I know the dude can move.
Didn't Alex Boone ended up as guard at the NFL, right?
Yeah, he did.
And I know I don't think he had any he's not still.
He didn't. But Boone can move too, and so that's, he was and that's the thing. If you're going to be that big and that tall, you got to be able to move because you got to be agile because you got to be able to come out of a stance. It's harder to come out of a guard stance than it is to come out of a tackle stance. You're pulling a lot more than the tackles are. You're usually down. You spend especially in today's football, the tackles are usually in 2-point stances a lot of the times, where the guards switch a lot between 2 and 3-point stances. Yeah. They're down in 3-point stances. Sometimes they're up a little bit more, but
right. Yeah. I mean, and that'd probably be difficult for him for an entire game.
Yeah. So who knows?
Okay. So let's say, so you think, but Harry Miller, I think Harry's a starter. I just don't know.
I do too. I think he probably
I think Harry's the center.
He probably, but it depends if Matthew Jones impresses so many people and there's no issues this spring, he might take the center just by default, and then Harry might end up being a guard again.
I mean, if Matthew Jones proves that he's a better center than Harry, yes, he should be your center because center touches the ball. I mean, he is him and the quarterback touch the ball every play. Like your best guy needs to be there at center. However, if all's even, but Matthew Jones is if it makes more sense for Matthew to be guard, he should be starting at guard. But I do think that Harry's your starting center because, as you said, he was looking a little bit better in the Michigan State game, and he was always thought of as the center of the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually,
and you got Whippler behind him.
Munford really did do them a solid because losing Josh and White is tough, but losing Josh White and Munford, that's a lot harder.
And but it was expected though. So
now it's like this offensive line ends up looking a lot better coming into the season than a lot of people anticipated it would.
Yeah, Thayer and Olave, them coming back, that was like the greatest gift Ryan Day could have because they were expected to be gone, not even by performance, just by age. I mean, well, Olave was more so by performance, but they were both going to be drafted guys. Like I mean, I can't imagine Thayer got a grade less than the third round, which I know usually it's like you want a second round grade if you're going early, but if you get a third round grade, I think that's like, there's no reason he shouldn't have left. But hey, he did us a solid.
Yeah. All right. So you want to touch anything more on the line, or you want to move into tight ends?
Well, I mean, I would say let's say what we think the starters are going to be. So left to right, I think it's going to be Mumford, Harris Johnson, Harry Miller, Matthew Jones, MPF.
That's how I'll say the same. I'm going to say Matthew Jones at center. And now I'm thinking of more in Miller at the right guard.
Harry at guard.
Unless he feels more comfortable at left guard. And I think Paris will take the other guard.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that, I think Matthew Jones I liked what I saw from him. I think he's smart. I think he's strong. I think he's tough.
He's very strong.
And if he, as long as he has the smartness to play center, and he has the quickness to be able to snap, the mental quickness to snap block.
Yeah, sure.
That's a lot of people overlook that type of stuff. There's another whole nother level with being a center, because you get your first important job is you got to get the snap off.
Right.
That's the most important thing. And, and then you got to block, and, where the other four positions just have to block. And, so if he can do that and he could take this job in the spring, and then I think it's his job to lose in the fall.
I mean, I believe I read it as Harry Miller is a genius. Matthew Jones buries people into the ground. So
yeah, I'm gonna say same five, but I'll just do that little switch. I think I'll say Matthew Jones takes the center job in the spring, and then come August, it's his job to lose, and Harry's gonna have to climb the mountain to take it from him. And but I think Harry will take one of the guard spots. Then
okay, yeah, I say Harry at center, but same starters, just different layout.
Yeah. All right, so on to the tight end.
Just to cut you off, sorry. I know nothing about tight ends right now. I feel very underprepared. I know Jeremy Ruckert's your starter.
Yeah, we could always come back to tight ends, throw maybe some stuff. Because, with Farrell leaving,
Hausman left too, right? Or is he back?
I thought he was back. I could be wrong.
Oh, I could be wrong. That makes it a lot easier for me.
Ryan Day couldn't even remember who was still on the team. He's like, I don't think anybody's left, but I could be wrong. There's 112 of them.
Yeah.
I did get a kick out of that. Yeah. God, I loved how they used the tight ends towards the end of last year. Probably should have came back to him a little bit more in the national title game, but
are you finally going to see a Ricky Dudley, Ben Hartsock type of use? Or yes or no? Is Jeremy Ruckert going to get 30 catches?
It's just no, I don't know, because they have so many good wide receivers.
I know but that's what he does so well. I mean, I think Jeremy Ruckert's going to play in the NFL for a long time, because that's the type of guy they like as a tight end now. He's got, and he can block. He can block.
I think we are going to get our highest drafted tight end since Dudley.
I think he could possibly. He's such a mismatch. He might be a first round tight end.
Yeah.
And I know with a guy that probably has maybe 40 catches in his career at Ohio State, maybe not. Yeah. That's kind of like sounds crazy to say out loud, but he's that good. Yeah. Could you imagine Florida, like Kyle Pitts, what they did with him, if they had Jeremy Ruckert, what they would be doing?
Yeah.
They would showcase that guy.
Yeah. It's just, I think Ruckert is just, he's a perfect fit for the team. It's just, but he's a great team player, because he knows he has a lot of great talent on the outside. So he gets lost in this. I just hope Justin Fields started finding him last year. I hope that these three young kids, they find him too, because, that's just tight end's always been it's always been the most intriguing positions on the field to me. I love the tight end because you can't block him, you can't cover him. And it's just, I know you need other players, because you can't rely solely on a tight end, because if a team could just take you down to your tight end, it's going to be very hard to win the game, because they're not scoring a touchdown every play where almost a receiver could.
Because, right.
You know, it's almost like by attrition, but.
Is he our most dynamic tight end since Ricky Dudley?
I think so. I mean,
I can't imagine. Even like I was saying, like Hireman was so good, but it's just athletically not the same.
I mean, we've had a lot of good tight ends. I mean, you had Stoneburner in there. You had a couple other guys. I mean, it's just
Hireman, Vanette. Tressel always had good ones, even if, you know, the one.
Hamby couldn't block anybody, but, you know,
that's catch a touchdown that hit his hands 10 times.
It's a different story. But, there's been good tight ends. It's just tight ends just don't.
Marcus Ball.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't get used like what they maybe once were used in the world. And it's kind of a shame because it's just, like I said, there's such mismatches. You know, you got to put your corner on them. Well, they're going to get blocked out and destroyed. Or are you going to try to cover with a linebacker, or they're going to run right by the linebacker?
Right.
You know, so I mean, tight end. I hope Ruckert stays active within the offense, because again, that's just another weapon that they get to go to.
Okay, so let's say this. I mean, Kate Stover, we don't know anything about him. He was a great defensive player. Hopefully, you know, he's an athlete, though. We know that. We're not going to see as much 12 personnel next year.
Probably not. I mean, even with Hausman, it'll be situational with 12 personnel.
And you got so many receivers.
And Ryan Day is a pretty smart coach. He mixes things up pretty well with the personnel he has.
And he talked about having a second running back on the field sometimes too.
So I think because he's going to have a legitimate offseason this year, he's going to show a lot more. I mean, I don't even know how much 12 personnel he liked 12 personnel the season before, but I even think he went to 12 personnel to the well a lot more last year than even the year before, just on a percentage wise per game, because he didn't really have. He knew that was a bread and butter, and they needed to stick with bread and butters, and they didn't get too exploratory in a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I think he's, the season before, even with them doing a lot of 12 personnel, which was probably their base offense, they had a lot of other different types of formations they ran throughout the season that they really didn't do last year.
So. Right. No, I agree with that.
So I think he's going to show a lot. He'll be back to his coaching style. He's going to show a lot of formations. There will be 12 personnels when it works, and then there will be 4 wide receivers and other times.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think that finishes up the offense. And with that, I think we will
get on out of here.
We got a full day of basketball.
Yeah, we got about like 30 minutes till the first tip off. So I hope everyone has a great time watching the games. Don't have too much fun. Be safe out there.
Yeah.
If this podcast ends up a little jacked up, we did have some technical difficulties in the middle of it. So we apologize for that. Hopefully everything's still enjoyable, fun to listen to though.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get on out of there with that.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for stopping out here today at the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH.
Go Buckeyes.
Go Buckeyes.
Well, thank you for watching here, the Buckeye Bar guys, here on the Buckeye Bar Talk network. Please subscribe to the network, and when you get the little notification bell, just hit that. Hit all notifications. That way you'll get alerted when all the new episodes come up. Comment, like the show, and we hope to you join our community. Come join our bar.
Like, comment, share. I'm John. That's Mike. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.